Thank you for stopping by to learn about the Constitutional Safe Zone initiative being taken up by patriots from every state of our republic. I am 1% Watchdog, an American patriot. I founded the Freedom Movement of the United States and the United States Civilian Forces in 2015, and I serve as the director of the Freedom Institute, a think tank dedicated to the freedom platform of the Freedom Caucus and Freedom Party. I'm going to guarantee you right now that you are not going to go home tomorrow disappointed because no one was ready to stand up for the Finicums, the Bundys, the Santillis, the Weavers, the Koreshes, the Hammonds, the Sagebrush Rebels, your family, my family, and all the other 300 plus million Americans who are the direct victims of government tyranny. And why do I say that? Because after my talk, you are going to visit our table and website to learn how to set up a constitutional safe zone. And then tomorrow you are going to return home enthusiastic with confidence to patiently implement the 12 steps to establishing a constitutional safe zone in your county that I am going to give you right here and right now. In today's discussion, I will cover 8 points. Number 1, the purpose of government. Number 2, the 4 branches of government. That's right, there's 4. Number 3, our role in our system of government. Number 4, our relationship with the government. These are all very important topics. Then number 5, most importantly, where we need to draw the line with government. Number 6, how we need to check tyranny. And number 7, how we need to exercise our power. And number 8, the most important, how to establish a constitutional safe zone in your county. So what is the purpose of government? It's stated right there in our first document, the Declaration of Independence. We formed the government to secure our rights. That is the core purpose for establishing the federal government. Anything else that's there is supporting and subject to the core mission of securing our rights. And whenever a government fails to secure our rights, again quoting from the Declaration of Independence, and becomes despotic, becomes destructive to that end, to securing our rights, then it's our right, it's our duty to alter or abolish that government and reestablish good government. So that's the essence of the constitutional safe zone. So let's move on and cover all of our 8 topics. The next topic, the 4 branches of government. We've been brainwashed by modern liberal educators to believe that there's 3 branches of government, and there may be something like the 4th estate or the 4th branch, which is the mainstream media, but actually that's controlled by the government also, right? Operation Mockingbird. So, no. The fact is that we are the first branch of government, we the people who establish the Declaration of Independence, the United States Constitution, and the Bill of Rights. And we function as the first branch of government, superior to the other 3 subordinate branches, the legislative, executive, and judicial branches. So what is our role in our system of government? The American system, also known as the American experiment. So we have basically three functions. We have legislative, we have executive, and we have judicial functions as the civilian authority of we the people. Legislatively, we are the source of power. We give and we withhold consent. We delegated power through the United States Constitution. That was a legislative function. We are the executive in terms of being watchdogs and overseers of the government and serving as the force of last resort when the local, state, or federal government fails to protect us against acts of tyranny, acts of terrorism, or natural disasters. So we function and stand up when there's no one else there. We serve a judicial function as members of the grand jury and members of the jury. We have the final say on the constitutionality of any government action. And that comes into play also when we individually, every U.S. citizen has that supreme power under God over the other branches of government as a member of the jury. If the jurist doesn't like the law passed by Congress, they don't think it's fair, they don't like the way the government law enforcement handled the case, they don't like the way the judge handled the case, they can vote not to convict. That's called jury nullification. That's the power of every individual U.S. citizen to completely nullify all the actions of all three of the other branches of government. That's called supreme power. So that's our judicial function. And we have another unique natural law function, which is we are the only check and balance to government tyranny. When the government becomes despotic and tyrannical, there's, as we see today in modern times, there's actually no one else who can save the day. There's no one else who can give relief to the state of tyranny and corruption other than we the people. So we serve as a check and balance to government tyranny and corruption. So what is our relationship with the government? Number one, we are powerful sovereign rulers. This is the unique American experiment where the government of the people, by the people, and for the people. The people are the sovereign. Sovereign means ruler, right? So collectively, we the people rule this country. We own this country. We are not subjects of the government, as in the feudalistic medieval state where everyone was a subject of the king. So we the people in the United States, we are the king, so to speak, although, it's figuratively speaking. But practically speaking, we are the sovereign ruler of this country. And the government is our paid servants, as we say, public servants. We elect them, we hire them, we appoint them, we give them a salary, and when they're done with their contract, they go home. So they're not the rulers, they're not the king, they're not the sovereign. That's us. That's we the people collectively. We are not subjects under government, but rather vice versa. We are the first branch of government over the other three. We are the check and balance to tyranny. They are the potential tyrants. We are the rule makers in the form of the Constitution and Bill of Rights. They are the rule followers. They can't do anything that's unconstitutional. They'll be checked. We are the force of last resort. They are our subjects. We are the jury and grand jury. They operate with our will. If we don't agree, whatever work they did to get that guy into court and convict him, we nullify it. We give and withhold consent. They receive power from us, not vice versa. They don't give us permission, we give them permission. And we never gave them permission to infringe our rights. We are the #1 armed force in the world. The U.S. military is #2 after us. We're the final determiners of constitutionality, not the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is supreme in the context of the 3 branches of government, but above that is we the people. So the Supreme Court has something called judicial review. We have civilian authority review that can strike down Supreme Court rulings as unconstitutional. That's the power of we the people. That's the power of the sovereign. So where do we draw the line with government tyrants, with government tyranny? First, we have to define tyranny. And here's a definition. Infringing any of our rights to any degree, that's tyranny. We need to have a clear definition. We established this government to secure our rights. We stated what those rights are primarily, and many are unlisted even. So if the government cannot secure our rights, and rather the government takes the delegated power and abuses it by taxing us, collecting money, buying bigger guns than what we have, and then pointing those guns at us and saying, now you don't have rights, you can't do this, you can't do that, even though the Constitution says you can, that's called tyranny. Okay? That's where we need to draw the line. How can we check tyranny? We simply withdraw consent. To be governed unconstitutionally, how? By exercising our governmental powers. Yes, we have governmental powers. As the civilian authority, the first branch of government, which is referenced under the 9th and 10th Amendments. The 9th and 10th Amendments show us that not only have we reserved powers, not delegated, we actually reserve all the powers, including the delegated. So all the governmental powers we delegated, we also retain those powers naturally, just like every business owner who hires a manager to run his business retains the power to run his business even though he hires somebody else to do it for him. And if that manager goes rogue, then the owner has the duty and the right to go in and exercise all the powers of management and replace that guy and run the business himself until he can appoint a suitable candidate to take over the management. So that's our relationship with this government. All the powers they have of a government, we also have, and even if we don't choose to exercise them. But they're there whenever we need them, whenever we feel the need, when we feel insecure and we feel that our rights aren't being secured by tyrants, when it becomes a state of tyranny. So this is actually the work of 3%ers. This is not the work of the 30%ers. This is not the work of the 70%ers. Okay, the 70%ers were the willing slaves of the King of England in the colonial era before independence. 70% of the colonists wanted to remain under the King of England. They were Tories and loyalists to the Redcoats. So this is not about vox populi. This is not about democracy. This is not about majority or supermajority. Only 3% of the population stood up to declare independence and freedom. They forced freedom onto these 70%. 30% agreed, but they didn't do, they supported, but they didn't take action physically. They didn't pick up weapons. They may have printed things and done things, but they didn't pick up weapons. So the 3%ers, or even we can say the 33%, they enforced and imposed their will, their desire to be free, their unalienable God-given right to be free on the majority. Think about that. This is not a matter of, well, when everybody agrees, we can do it. No. Even if there's one person or 5 people that want to be free and they don't want to be slaves, they can impose their will on the 95% or the 99%. Because that's a God-given, unalienable right. We don't need permission. We don't need majority votes to be free. No one can compel us to be a slave. If the whole world is against us and wants us to be a slave, we can go against the whole world, one person. That's our God-given right. So fortunately, there's more than one person who wants to be free in this country. There's millions of us. And we will impose our will, if necessary, against those who want to remain debt slaves. Just like the debt slavery that was imposed on us by the King of England. He was loaning money from the Bank of England on interest. The interest was piling up, and he said, hey, let's throw that onto the colonists and let them be our debt slaves. Let them pay off the interest loans. So we said, hell no. We said, hell no. So those who want to remain debt slaves to the same bankers from London who control our Federal Reserve, where all your tax money goes to pay the interest on the Federal Reserve debt, the national debt. You want to buy into that tyranny? Then get ready for freedom, because freedom's down around the corner. How does a 3%er exercise power? Number one, proportionately, according to a non-aggression principle on the basis of defense, which means, and we're not talking about nonviolence. Nonviolence means if somebody comes and beats you over the head with a stick or shoots at you, you do nothing. You just take it. Non-aggression principle means if someone attacks you, you can defend yourself. And that's the principle of the 3%. That we are going to be defensive. We are not going to, be aggressive. We won't be the first to be aggressive. Number two, justifiably. We will offer the tyrants due process of law, which most likely they've denied us. So we're better than them. We're going to achieve our goal in spite of due process. We will give them due process. Number three, minimally. Minimally means, in reality, 90% of what we have to do and the results, 90% of the results we're going to achieve is going to be through good communications. That's our main challenge. 10% other means. As far as possible, we don't want to use force, but we're ready if necessary on a defensive NAP basis. Okay? Which means if a tyrant is resisting us and attacking us because we're standing up and defending our rights, then we will defend ourselves. We will use force as a matter of self-preservation. We exercise our power with impunity. The iron rod versus the clay pot formula. We will not exercise force when we are in the position of the clay pot and the tyrant's in the position of the iron rod and get ourselves smashed. We will not exercise power when we are equal to the tyrant in power. Like two clay pots colliding, both get smashed. That's like Russia and America being equal in nuclear power, so they call that mutually assured destruction. If we were to go to nuclear war with Russia, we would both be destroyed, assuredly. So we don't want that also. So we always want to be, when we're exercising power, in a position of the iron rod, when the tyrant's in the position of clay pot. Okay, that's a winning formula. We don't want to create another Waco. We don't want to create a Ruby Ridge or anything like that. We exercise power with the best methods process, and we're going to discuss that in a minute. That's our 12-step process, constitutional safe zone process. And we execute power at the county level with law enforcement, with LEOs. That's the strategy. That's the best strategy, because everyone says, well, when the legislation's coming out that we don't like, that goes against our rights, call your congressman, call your representative. Okay, but that's a very difficult and frustrating process. I think we've all experienced that. We've all called our congressman, and we haven't really seen results from that. Maybe here and there once in a while, but it's a constantly changing platform of people and issues and influences. And basically, the bankers are throwing money, the lobby groups and special interests are throwing millions, if not billions of dollars into that system to get the legislation they want to take away our rights, to exploit us, to game our system. Okay? So that's a big problem, and that's something we need to work on. But, we have immediate problems that need to be dealt with, and that's with law enforcement, because that's where legislation, where the rubber hits the road, okay? The laws they pass, the Speaker of the House and, Paul Ryan and all these guys, they are not going to come and pick you up off the street and arrest you, okay? It's the law enforcement officer who's going to enforce that law and put you in jeopardy with the judicial system. So, and we don't want it to go all the way to the judicial system unnecessarily. Otherwise, we talk about jury nullification, which we already spoke about. But what we need to do is focus on law enforcement and get them to stand down and not enforce unconstitutional laws. That's the key. And if we achieve just that, see, I can go to Washington, D.C. and never achieve anything. I can try to meet 400 and whatever, 30 plus representatives in the House, and I can go and meet 100 senators in the Senate, and I can spend a year there and still achieve nothing, because there's a lot of people and a lot of opinions and people flowing in and out, elections every 2 years, and it's a madhouse. And then you have to outspend the bankers, right? Swiss bank accounts and all that. So, but I can probably, overnight, I could probably talk to my local sheriff and probably get him on board. If I talk to him nicely, communicate with him properly, I could probably get him to sign a contract that he's not going to violate the Constitution at all, and he's going to ignore all those stupid laws that they're passing or that have been passed. And that's doable. That's achievable within, a day, a week, a month, a year. That's something, if we concentrate our efforts on, we can achieve that. So with impunity means that, we don't exercise our power in such a way that the next day we end up dead, we end up in prison, or we end up shot in the hospital. We want to exercise power when we can do so with impunity. Impunity means without being punished. And that requires numbers. We need large numbers of people in order to do that. Or we need to exercise powers that will not jeopardize us in those ways. There's different ways we can exercise different levels of power proportionately according to our situation as we grow in strength. So let's move on to the next slide. Those who really do not consent to tyranny must file charges with an authority that can check your tyrant, your local tyrant, or your state level tyrant, or your federal tyrant, right? Because if you don't file charges, you're consenting to tyranny. Silence means acceptance. Inaction is consent. Just like if somebody comes and punches me in the stomach, and if I don't go and file charges against them, it's not a crime. It's not battery, unless I do not consent to it and I file formal charges. Otherwise, it's somebody who just hit me in the stomach with my consent. You know, it happens all the time in boxing rings and other places where the fighters mutually consent to beat the hell out of each other. So those aren't crimes. It's when the person doesn't consent, it becomes a crime, unless you do mutilation or serious, grievous bodily injury. But for the most part, you know, unless we object and unless we file a complaint, it's going to be consensual. So we have 4 branches of government to choose from. Where are we going to get relief? Where are we going to file our charges and resolve this act of tyranny? So we're back to the same slide. These are the 4 branches. Are you going to go to we the people, the civilian authority? Are you going to go to the legislature, Paul Ryan? You're going to go to the executive branch, POTUS, your governor, your sheriff? You're going to go to the judicial branch, SCOTUS, the high court, the low court? Where are you going to go? And in most cases today, if you're dealing with a real tyrant, these lower 3 branches of government have been gamed. The legislation has been gamed in such a way that you will not be able to get relief. Even if you're a whistleblower or if you're, you know, whatever, wherever you go, you're going to find a dead end. The system is rigged against us to protect the tyranny, to protect the tyrants. So your only real recourse for most cases, most issues today, is going to be the civilian authority of we the people, due to the deep level of corruption that our country, our government is in today. So now we've reached the 12-step process for securing our rights through the Constitutional Safe Zone Initiative. I think when you realize what these 12 steps are, you're going to become very enthusiastic and confident that we could achieve this. We could, on our own, exercising our civilian authority and working together, we can secure our rights even in the face of the level of corruption and tyranny that we see evident today, that we've seen in the last year, year and a half, 2 years. It's come out of the woodwork. I think if Trump achieved anything, whether you like him or not, or you like his policies or not, he exposed how deep the corruption is. You know, by challenging the media, by challenging Hollywood, by challenging Washington, by challenging, you know, what we call the deep state. I think a lot of people are alarmed, a lot of people are surprised on both sides of the aisle, regardless of your political affiliation. I think it's been a shocking revelation in the last 2 years of how elections are actually run, how the Department of Justice is run, how the FBI is run, so forth and so on. Things that have been going on in the White House, the State Department, the CIA, with Edward Snowden. I think the ball really started rolling with Edward Snowden. Of course, you had Bradley Manning to some degree, maybe a lesser degree. But Edward Snowden and the Trump effect has been, let's say, you know, the least we can say, it's been mind-blowing. So now we're going to go step by step. We have 12 steps we're going to cover, and then I'm going to ask you to go look at that for yourself on our website. So if you want to take a moment right now, you can take out your phone and you can go on your web browser and go to the website and get it open and maybe bookmark it or just keep it there for later. Let's go to the first step, and that's the website at the bottom of the screen, bit.do/CSZ. That's the website for the Constitutional Safe Zone information, and we'll show you what that web page looks like at the end of this presentation. We're almost done. So step number 1 is to put tyrants on notice with Constitutional Safe Zone signs. So we have signs available to you that are high quality, printed on vinyl, like banner material. And you can get them in different sizes. The standard sizes we offer are 6 inches in diameter. That's 6 by 6. And then you have 1 by 1 feet. You have 2 by 2 feet, 3 by 3, 4 by 4, 5 by 5, 6 by 6, 7 by 7, and 8 by 8 feet. That's the largest size for standard orders. But if you need something bigger, we can do it. We can get it for you, but that's a special order. It's not available. You just need to put that in the order form when you order a sign, that you need a special sign, and we'll contact you, and we'll work that out. That can be done. If you need, probably we can do like 50 by 50 feet, but that's going to be a special order. In any case, we have t-shirts, we have hoodies, we have tank tops, all different kinds of apparel with the signage on it. And on the reverse side of the shirt, it shows, it says Civilian Authority. So it's a really nicely designed shirt, looks really good, good quality. And you can get all that. You can get the application, our app, you can get the shirts, the signs, to put these tyrants on notice. You can post these signs in your front lawn, on your car, in your house, at your work, in front of the post office, on notice boards, on public spaces where it's allowable or wherever you feel it's allowable. Some people were thinking to do near on-ramps and off-ramps. I don't know if that's allowable in every state, but in any case, use your creativity and your due diligence and better judgment, and put signs everywhere, in the parks, in front of the schools, wherever, Constitutional Safe Zone. And basically this sign, it's just saying the Constitution, right? It says this area designated Constitution Safe Zone USA. Well, that's what the Constitution does, right? The whole country is the Constitution Safe Zone. It's supposed to be. And so we say that no-go zone for tyrants and terrorists who want to infringe our rights. Public notice, it gives the website bit.do/CSZ, and it says, by order of the civilian authority of we the people. So it's like a mini Constitution. It's the essence of the Constitution and Bill of Rights. It's like a symbol of it, and it's got the basic idea there. So, and it looks like a stop. It's in the same shape and colors of a stop sign. And it looks, impressive. So, step 2. So putting the tyrants on notice, that's the first thing. And they're going to go to the website and say, oh my God, my county is now a Constitution Safe Zone. Are they considering me a tyrant? What's going on? What is this? And they're going to go to the website and they're going to figure it out. They're going to learn something. Step number 2, declare amnesty for nonviolent tyrants. Okay, so the Constitutional Safe Zone website gives amnesty. It explains the terms of amnesty. But we want to state that violent offenders will be dealt with by competent authority as soon as possible. So when we have enough strength and numbers to deliver justice to the most violent offenders, that will be done. Rest assured. Or through a newly constituted government, but justice will be done. Step number 3, draw the line. No more infringements on any of our rights. Constitutional Safe Zone website defines the line, and tyrants who disrespect the civilian authority will face consequences. So the consequences that they could face are going to be spelled out. It is spelled out on that website. So we need to define the line. Step 4, document fresh violations to redress grievances. The Constitutional Safe Zone app shows you how to report and document violations by tyrants permanently to the blockchain. So this is the point. So we say, okay, whatever you've done in the past that's not a serious violent offense, we're going to overlook that. That's amnesty. Okay, whatever violations against the Constitution you've done, we're going to forget you did that. But from now on, we're going to be monitoring you, and if you violate the Constitution and our rights, then we will document that, okay? And we will file complaints to the civilian authority. So then what happens? Then a mediator for the civilian authority will contact the victim, take their statement. Then they'll contact the violator, the tyrant, and see if they're willing to mediate the issue to the satisfaction of the victim. And if they agree, then the goal is to get a signed agreement from them, and that's what's being presented, I believe, at the North Carolina Patriot Network meeting, is the contract with the Constitution, that they sign a contract and say, I will not violate the Constitution from now into the future, and if I do, I will resign from office and I will not be allowed to hold any government office in any position at any level. So that's a real contract developed by lawyers with Secretary of State from different states, and it's a serious contract. It's not just a fluff thing. It's going to be notarized and signed, and it's going to be a legally binding contract. So that's basically the goal, is to bring them on board, and then we can publish the contract that they signed, which is to their benefit, and we can say that whatever violation you did, we're going to keep that on file and we won't publicly post that, as long as you're performing your duties and upholding your oath to office. So step number 6 is, if they don't agree to mediation and they don't sign a contract, then we will issue a civilian authority citation against them and permanently record it on the Constitutional Offenders Registry, which is in our CSZ blockchain database. No one's going to be able to censor that, delete it, do anything to it. It's a permanent record that will follow them the rest of their life, with their picture, their name, phone, address, the violation, the evidence, everything will be there. Full disclosure. So nobody's going to want to be branded as a constitutional offender in the Constitutional Offenders Registry any more than anybody wants to be on the Sexual Offenders Registry or anything like that. So that's what we're talking about in step number 6. And step number 7 is those citations will be forwarded to a civilian authority grand jury for indictment. Indictment means that they violated their vow, their oath of office to uphold and defend the Constitution. Okay, so the app shows how to do that, how to participate in the grand jury, and so on. Step number 8. Once the indictment is issued, it gets recorded to the blockchain, permanent record. Then A civilian authority tribunal will be held online. All this work is online. The grand jury, the citation, the tribunal. You don't have to go into some physical space where they could try to do something to you or violate your rights or disrupt the process or, try to do some nonsense. So they're going to be invited to participate in this process online, including the Civilian Authority Tribunal, which will go for a conviction and sentencing against this violator, this tyrant. So how will they be sentenced? That depends on the jury. We're going to give them due process. We can appoint a representative to them if they don't have an attorney. We can, give them a jury trial of a jury of their peers, everything. Right to face their accusers, to cross-examine, to present witnesses, to hear the witness and the evidence against them, the whole thing, full due process. And once they get convicted and sentenced, that goes to the blockchain, permanent record. Step 9, we establish civilian consent policies at the county level. So now you've got these violators and convicts, constitutional offenders and convicts, and the sentencing could be anything from a warning, it could be whatever the jury decides, it could be demand to render community service, it could be demand to compensate the victims, it could be a demand to resign from office, it could be impeachment of their authority, that we no longer recognize them as an authority. You've been impeached by the civilian authority, and like that. And if they don't submit to the demands, then we can issue further charges, citations, and so forth against them for contempt. So they're going to be building up a record, and we will use that record to recruit more people to build our numbers, right? To grow the power of the civilian authority. To say, look at the problems in this county. Look how many times this guy has flaunted the civilian authority. He does not respect our authority. He does not listen to anything we say, and he's still acting like a tyrant after so many years or months. So, the more we build up this case, the more the fire builds and the more they, put themselves in jeopardy with the civilian authority directly. So that's their choice. Everyone has a choice. They have suicide by cop. So now, suicide by the civilian authority. It's like stirring the hornet's nest. You want to stir the hornet's nest? You can. You have freedom. Go ahead. What's going to happen? We know what's going to happen. So I guess that's a case of natural selection. Those who are foolish tyrants won't last long. Step number 9 is, now when you see at the county level you have a problem with this department, this individual, or whatever, you can come together as a civilian authority and establish policy, which is we withdraw our consent for the sheriff's department to operate in this county due to this list of offenses like we've listed in Declaration of Independence. These are all the charges against the King of England. So when you have enough to constitute a policy change, then you can withdraw consent. And we have a CSZ policy dashboard that will show you what the policies are in any given county that has a constitutional safe zone established. So you can say in this county, the sheriff's department has full consent, it's green light. In another county next door, it has yellow light. It's functioning with restrictions. It cannot operate in certain areas at certain, things. And in another county, it's red lighted and says this sheriff's office has no consent to operate whatsoever in this county until further notice due to excessive corruption and violations. So now, they may or may not follow that. They probably won't. unless we have power, right? If they're more powerful, they're going to laugh it off and say, oh, yeah, okay, we don't have your consent, but we're going to keep working. We're going to keep doing our tyranny. So that brings us to step number 10. When we have enough power, when we reach critical mass and we have the numbers and we become the iron rod, then number 10 is enforce policy through civilian forces with impunity. So that's the 3% function, is to enforce policy of we the people with impunity as the iron rod in your county, in spite of the 70%, which we can predict, and with the help of the 30%. So that's step number 10, is to start enforcing policy if the tyranny is out of control, obviously. If there's no problem, we don't need to make policy and we don't need to enforce it. We let the government run normally, right? If the government's running nicely, we have nothing to do. We sit on the sofa and eat Cheetos and watch TV and browse the internet, So step number 11 is issue enforcement operations reports. Now, when there's policy established and policy enforcement operations are being conducted, then each time there's an operation where a tyrant is resisting our policies and attacking us, and we have to defend ourselves, then that becomes an operations report. Who was on both sides, what they did, the outcome, casualties, if any, benefits, costs, and so forth and so on, implications and like that. So that will be a enforcement operations report, which will also be permanently recorded on the blockchain. And the final step is reestablishing government to secure our rights, establishing good government to secure our constitutional rights. And that's also explained on the app and the website. So that's the whole goal. That's the whole point of establishing government, is to secure our rights. And the only time that we need to stand up, according to Thomas Jefferson and the Declaration of Independence, is when the government becomes rogue and despotic and starts becoming destructive and taking away our rights. That they raise tax money, they misuse the power that we delegated to them to tax us unfairly, which we don't consent to, the federal income tax, which was added later on, way in the 20th century, and they use that money, that ill-gotten money, to purchase guns that are more powerful than our guns. And then they turn their guns against us and say, now you have no more rights, or you don't have the right to do this, or you don't have the right to do that you had in the Constitution. So that's called tyranny. That's called, hijacking our country at gunpoint. So that's what has to be dealt with. That's the goal, is to establish good government that's there to secure our rights, not to infringe them like tyrants. And we want everybody to come forward. We're looking for constitutional safe zone promoters and leaders in every county, in every state of the United States. So if you're interested in this, please go to the website, and I'm going to show you what that looks like. This is the sign, the Constitutional Safe Zone logo. And here's the website, bit.do/CSZ. This is what it looks like. And you see at the top it has the links for the app, for CSZ gear, for signs, for the CSZ blockchain database. You can see it directly. It's an open, transparent, publicly accessible, uncensorable database. And the helpline for setting up your constitutional safe zone, or getting the app installed, or getting gear or signs or the database explaining, or whatever you need. You can SMS that number. That's an SMS only number. If you send a text message to that number, you will be called back or messaged back with a response, hopefully within 24 hours. So thank you again for coming. Thank you for standing up. Thank you for your service to we the people, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This is 1% Watchdog for the Freedom Movement, the United States Civilian Forces, and the Freedom Institute, signing off, and I hope to speak to you soon on Zello. Download the Zello app at zello.com/app. That's our talk channel, and you can join that channel at zello.com/CSZ. And you can speak to me directly, 1% Watchdog. Thank you again, and have a great day.